o'clock. At some point today, I tried to find out exactly when and where, don't know. Kristen Welker is interviewing Donald Trump. And at some point today, I tried to find out, but don't know. Some clips will be released. The entire interview will air Sunday morning because, Sean, if it's Sunday morning, it's A, time to take a nap, B, time to get ready for NFL football, or C, meet the press.
D, time to go to church.
Yes, also that. Although, to be honest, John McCain considered being on Meet the Press the equivalent of going to church.
Well played.
Now, moments ago,
Mark, since you brought one quick point on the Meet the Press, I couldn't help. I mean, you heard my disappointment yesterday at this.
Yes.
So look at the panel that they have to discuss the interview afterwards. Eugene Daniels, the Politico reporter / Kamala Harris in waiting press secretary, Carol Lee of NBC, Jen Psaki, and Mark Short, former chief of staff to vice president.
I always joke when panels on TV shows have Mark Short as the pro-Trump voice.
Yeah, and I'm friends with Mark. I've known him a long time.
I like Mark Short a lot, but he's super MAGA.
Analysis of the Trump interview with two reporters that don't like Trump, one openly, by the way, very openly, Jen Psaki, and then Mark Short. This is again why I was so disappointed they went to Meet the Press. This is a joke.
It is a joke. And I can't understand how whoever made the decision at NBC and to Meet the Press, how they could look at that and say, this is the right group of people. This represents America. I don't know. Did Mark Short vote for Trump? Do we know?
I don't know. And I don't want to know.
But I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous. And if you're watching us now and you don't know why we feel so strongly about how ridiculous this is, we'll do a whole episode about it. It is ridiculous. He won the popular vote. He won the Electoral College. He's going to be president. And the panel on to discuss the interview is people who are hostile to him. It's insane.
But can I just see that just so we're clear, though, because I don't mind, like people always said, you should face tough questions. But if the panel's goal is to provide analysis, here's what's going on. Yeah. How can somebody sit back after an interview and say, here's why Trump world is thinking that? Here's why Donald Trump is going to.
Of course.
No understanding of who he is. It's like bringing in a 100% panel to talk about
100%. It's 100%. And if they tried to get someone and failed, that's an embarrassment too. But they should say it. I have to say, I don't know Carol Lee all that well. I'm not sure I don't know what her position is on Donald Trump.
I dealt with her. I mean, she's friend. I mean, no, she's not an objective reporter.
Okay. I take you at your word because you studied it. But I can't endorse it because I don't know. We're going to talk a lot about Pete Hegseth today. And I just want to make clear, we think this is a super interesting story. It's not as important as child nutrition. It's not as important as U.S. competition with China, but it is a topic that's interesting to insiders and does illuminate a lot about how Washington works. And part of why Dan and Sean are here is because they're professors to explain to you how Washington works. So some of you may feel this is excessive day after day talking about one nominee, but there's a lot to say. And moments ago, contrary to what's been happening earlier, Donald Trump actually deigned to publicly weigh in on behalf of his embattled, always love that word, nominee for defense secretary. Please put up the Truth social posting. Sometimes people like to call them Truth, but that seems to be an issue. Put up the Truth, please, about from Donald Trump about Pete Hegseth. Okay, while we wait for that to come up, here we go. All right. So moments ago, hot off the presses, electronically submitted for your approval. Guys, we have it or we don't have it? All right, here we go. Pete Hegseth is doing very well. His support is strong and deep, much more so than the fake news would have you believe. He was a great student, Princeton, Harvard educated. Donald Trump, like Joe Biden, obsessed with the Ivy League. With a military state of mind, not so obsessed that he doesn't know not to capitalize military. He will be a fantastic, high-energy Secretary of Defense, probably a typo, one who leads with charisma and skill. Pete is a winner, all cap, perfectly acceptable for emphasis, and there is nothing that can be done to change that. As someone, a Republican who texted me about this Truth Social posting said, something can be done to change that. 4 Republican senators can vote no. Now, shortly after that Truth Social posting was tweeted, an image of it was tweeted cross-platform by the vice president-elect, J.D. Vance. Let's look at that. These two supportive moves on the part of the ticket-elect led by President Trump, we're fighting for Pete Hegseth, period. And we're doing so because Pete Hegseth will fight for our troops. For too long, the Pentagon has been led by people who lose wars. Pete Hegseth is a man who fought in those wars. We've got his back. All capitalization and punctuation and word usage, perfection. Thank you, J.D. Vance, for setting an example for America's children. I this morning posted two things both in my newsletter and on Twitter, also known as X. You can put us back up. Thank you. That suggest a lot of reasons why people are now saying in my world that Hegseth has a chance to be confirmed, unlike what I reported yesterday when I basically said he was dead. And all those things are true. All those things are true. Let's look at some of them. Katie Britt met with Hegseth yesterday. Here is about as supportive of a tweet as Pete Hegseth could expect from any senator. Beautiful pictures and long explanation about why he's so great. And then she concludes by saying, based on our meeting and his answers, he has my support. Female senator, popular with her colleagues, incredible. Okay. However, since I published what I published, I will offer the following things that I've learned this morning, because this is the way reporting works. Why did I get so much reporting yesterday and last night into the night about how well things are going? You can take the tweet down because people who support Hegseth heard what I was saying, read what I was reporting, and they wanted me to hear some of the alternative point of view, that things are better. And they weren't making things up. They're true. He's gotten to the point now where he's convinced, it appears, he's convinced folks, let me have a hearing. And if he can say no one's going to come out against him until there's a hearing, he buys himself a month. He can build more support. As Sean and Dan and I all talked about yesterday, there's some dynamics going on now that are very positive for him, which is to say not a single Republican senator has come out against him. And MAGA is fired up for him. DeSantis being floated actually may be a positive for him because a lot of MAGA doesn't like DeSantis. And as Sean sagely pointed out, he's turned this into a question of, are you for or against MAGA? Or are you for or against reforming the Pentagon? Not about Pete Hegseth's past, but the future of the Pentagon. Brilliant. He's also done two things which seem contradictory. He said, none of these accusations are true, and I'm a reformed man. I've been saved. Things are going well in some respects. Now, before I turn it over to Sean and Dan, let me tell you, I got a lot of the positive reporting for Hegseth in reaction to being negative. Now I got some negative stuff in reaction to being positive, okay? Do not be surprised. I'm not predicting this or telling you it's going to happen, but do not be surprised if a Republican senator comes out against Hegseth today. Okay, do not be surprised if that happens, number one. Number two, there are Republican senators who have told their colleagues they are going to be against Hegseth no matter what. Who would surprise you? They're not on the lists that we've talked about here. Okay, now they could change their mind, but there are some who are saying I am against. Okay, number three, there are some extremely supportive senators, Republican senators, who say I hear stuff. There's going to be more stuff, so that Pete Hegseth is going to be dealing not just with the universe of current accusations, but new ones, according to in the view of some very supportive Republican senators. And then finally, well, two finalies, and then gentlemen, over to you. Number whatever I'm on. There's a possibility that a prominent accuser who has been anonymous is going to go on camera. Okay. And that's not dispositive, but one of the striking things is I believe every accuser is anonymous. I believe everyone is. Maybe there's some making smaller accusations who are or less decisive accusations, but it's possible that a not currently anonymous accuser will go on camera with the news organization. Lastly, please put up element number 3. The Army-Navy game holds some mystical place in the mind of Donald Trump. He loves the Army-Navy game. He was neither the Army nor the Navy. But it's reported by Kit Mayer of CNN, and it's been confirmed by others.
Actually, I believe it was reported by Meredith McGraw at Politico First, just FYI.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. Big fan of her reporting. Has been reported by many. Not only is Donald Trump going to the Army-Navy game, which is this. It's not this Saturday, right? It's a week from Saturday.
Correct.
Right, a week from tomorrow.
Correct.
He's going with Governor DeSantis, and so there are those who are saying that if this doesn't happen by the game, it's going to happen at the game. I don't know if that's true, but there are those who are saying, all right, I'm sorry if people thought that was excessive. I'll just in conclusion say, you can take the tweet down, put everybody back up. I'll just say in conclusion for my portion of this disquisition, that the right word? I don't know. Talking about Pete Hegseth, that I don't know where things stand. It's Donald Trump, as predictable as Kim Jong-un. I still think in the totality of what I know, he will not be the defense secretary, but there's still a lot of positive signs. But if some of the things I told might happen, less so. Sean Spicer, with that brief prelude of 13 minutes, over to you.
So a couple things. First of all, just to your point about these senators that are unnamed potentially coming out, one of the things that they don't want is the senators who have not been public don't want to vote. They don't want to have to go on record, right? It's
Correct.
one thing for the Armed Services Committee. He covered a lot of ground with armed services, which is critical, right? And I think he could probably get out of committee, but these guys don't want to vote. They don't want to go against MAGA. So they want to basically back channel, hey, I'm not going to be with you at the end. Don't put this up for a vote. But it's as much about their preservation as it is about the nominees, because they don't want to be on record being against him. So just to be clear, I think, I mentioned the other day the seesaw. This is even more apropos now. Pete had a really good day yesterday. That Katie Britt tweet was huge for him. Remember, and read in the tweet is important. At the end of the last Trump administration, the president had basically guaranteed that Space Force would be located in Alabama, which is huge for those in the Huntsville area. Biden moved it to Colorado, and there's been this holdup in appropriations, et cetera. Katie Britt's tweet, she's very clear because of the support for Space Force. And I think that's a combination of her and him, meaning she's made it clear, hey, look, I just happen to have this really big issue. I'm glad you're so supportive of it. And Pete reading the room right. So I think that's important to note. I think Pete also is benefiting from schedule, right? Think about this. Trump went to the Fox Patriot Awards moderated by Sean Hannity. And they started broadcasting yesterday live from the venue. The Five was there last night. And they were literally going out of their way to say nice things about their former colleague, Pete Hegseth. It was brilliant timing. And Pete got really lucky on that. Then Trump gets on, he'll tape Meet the Press today. I'll be really interested in the answer he gives, because obviously he's going to give today an answer that'll air Sunday, although my guess is that Meet the Press will
They'll put that out today. That'll be the news.
Because they can't, they don't want that to die on the vine potentially.
No.
But then here's the kicker. Trump's going to France for the reopening of Notre Dame, and that's perfect timing. It buys more time for Pete. And he meets early next week with Murkowski and Collins. That to me is, if he can win one of those two over potentially, that really buys him some time. So he is getting very, very lucky. The Army-Navy game is here at formerly known as FedEx Field, whatever it's called now, Commander's old stadium place.
Commander's Palace. It's called Commander's Palace. I recommend the duck.
Yeah. And that to me is going to be critical, because it's the opposite almost of either you're going to get a lot of good things said about Pete in the box, or he's going to get back channeled by a lot of establishment folks that say, I don't like the guy. But the work that happens between now and Monday, Tuesday is going to be critical for him. Like I said, I think he had a good day yesterday. I think continuing to see the positive support of JD Vance and others. Clearly, there's a nucleus around him that's saying positive things. Elon, others. This is very good for Pete. He just needs to keep that seesaw in his direction before.
You sure about Elon?
No, but I think Elon, as I said yesterday, can't be understated. The concerns he has about space.
Every time you misuse understated, I'm going to correct you.
All right, overstated. Sorry.
Thank you. That's right.
So
I'm not sure you're right about. Respectfully, I'm not sure you're right about Elon.
No. And I guess what I should overstate is that I think that Elon's influence about issues that he sees as important are going to be critical to where he believes Pete is. Does he think that Pete's on his side? Does he think that Pete is an ally? Because I'd rather go with the devil I know than the devil I don't. And I think if Elon feels as though Pete is going to be supportive in his efforts, I'd rather take that than an X factor of somebody else.
Dan, before I go to you, someone in the chat, again, I almost never read the chat, but I saw someone said I corrected Sean's grammar. I'm correcting you. I didn't correct his grammar. I corrected his usage. Dan.
I mean, this is remarkable that we are talking about kind of a little bit of a civil war on a nominee in December, and the world's richest man is sitting there at the table unelected. And what does he think of the nominee? Like, just to put this all in context, you're like, welcome to Trump 2.0 here. Look, I think the interesting thing is this is what we thought would happen with Matt Gaetz, which is there would be a stare down, and we thought senators would ultimately back down if Trump and the base lean into it. And I think right now, if you're Joni Ernst, you are increasingly out on a limb. I mean, the dogs are circling you. No one is coming to your defense. So if there are these other senators, if someone's going to go public today, to me, that is giving her some breathing room, because you don't want to be the one vote that's going to keep him from that seat. Like, usually if someone's going to go down, there's safety in numbers. So you'll try to orchestrate like 6 or 7, so you're not the poster child for the defeat. And today, at least, as we end this week, she is the poster child. Now another woman has come out, Katie Britt, right? So to say, like, I have a problem with women in combat, and as a woman, or the sexual assaults in the military, now you have Katie Britt. He's going to point to her, and the base is going to say, hey, like, why is Katie wrong then? So I think this is the stare down. I'm sure they're going to leak that he doesn't have the votes. And it sounds like the base and maybe Trump is going to dare them to go public. But I would just say, when you think about governing on January 20th, you don't want to have too many wars with members of your own party. They will ultimately look to get even or get revenge in their own way. And given that there's already all these fissures over sequencing with the House, with Doge, etc., like, there's only so much capital that a person has. And he may start burning some of it down on a nominee that most people would say in a vacuum is not the most qualified person to run DOD.
Well,
absolutely. All right.
The thing about AG, right, is he had this backup plan, not just Pam. I think there were others, Matt Whitaker, that people really liked. So the question is, this is the $1 million question on this one. With Matt Gaetz, when he stepped out, you saw, what did it take, 1.5 minutes before he threw Pam Bondi's name out? And I don't, with the exception of some concerns that people in this Second Amendment community have with Pam, which I think are largely assuaged, I don't, the question I have is, like, we floated this DeSantis name, and you saw, as Dan pointed out, this civil war, right? MAGA versus un-MAGA or whatever. I think the problem is that there isn't a backup name yet, right? That's been floated where people go, gosh, if Pete goes, I don't mind that fill in the blank is the person. If that name emerged, and right now it hasn't, I don't think there's anybody that's excited about Joni Ernst. And she tried it yesterday. Again, watch the words she said. I am not actively campaigning to be SecDef. That's not exactly a no, I don't want the job. And again, as much as I think DeSantis would sail through the Senate based on his qualifications as governor and as a former JAG officer, I think he'd be great. But I don't know that. I think it causes too much rift. And until there's a name floated where people go, gosh, if Pete goes down. And that's not the case yet. So again, this helps Pete because he's not competing against somebody that people are pondering, is that a viable alternative?
But I don't know, though. I mean, the fact that DeSantis has been floated, now he's scheduled to go to a football game, on a standalone game on national television that is going to get, the Excella corridor will be very present. I mean, I can't imagine he's doing it just to be nice to Ron DeSantis without, like, so I mean,
they both want to go to the game. They both go to the game regularly.
Well, he doesn't have to sit with Trump.
But I listen, as the guy, like we were in 2016, this is where this came up. Like we were like, hey, how cool would it be? Obama hasn't gone. Remember, this is.
Oh, I get why Trump's going. But
right,
the fact that
what
you
I'm
would have
saying
DeSantis with him and they're publicly announcing it 2 weeks out.
They might not even sit together.
Well, the other point I would just make is,
can I just tell you this? This is the kill. This is the kill shot. The second that they do come together in the
My camera's off.
that's going to be. This is why I'm saying time is of the essence for Hegseth this week. He needs to make sure that photograph. I mean, this is like one of those like society events where they're trying to keep one family away from the other, because the way it works is that Trump will sit on the Navy side for half of the game and on the Army side for another half, and there will be two boxes. Somebody will have invited him to a box that is predominantly on the Navy side, and then somebody will sit on the Army side. So. And obviously DeSantis, Navy guy, is going to want to make sure he's whatever half that is.
Yeah. All right. 2 more points. We got to move on because we want to get to people in a second. If you want to ask a question about any of this, please raise your hand if you're here on the two-way platform. 2 things. One is Joni Ernst has, as Dan pointed out, become the MAGA target. She even though she could be primaried, she's not the kind of senator who's going to bend to this compared to most. At the same time, as I said, there are other people who might become the target because they may go first. She seems to be inclined to say, fine, I won't come out against, I won't come out for, we'll wait for the hearing. I don't think she thinks he's going to make it, but she doesn't want to put the target anymore on her. The other thing is, even though he's up against substantial odds, and even though I think salvaging this will still be very difficult, you have to hand it to Pete Hegseth and his team. They have done an incredible job from Tuesday when he was declared dead, when the DeSantis thing got floated, through the end of the week. If you're someone who's a student of confirmation politics, or you're helping an embattled nominee, or you are an embattled nominee, there are a ton of lessons, not just for Republicans, to learn about what they've done. Bravo to them. Just on the mechanics, the tactics and strategies have been brilliant. All right, guys, 1 sentence each. 1 sentence. What significance, if any, do you attach to David Sachs taking a job dealing with AI and Bitcoin in the administration? Sean.
What? Say that.
1 sentence. Do you attach, what significance, if any, do you attach to his taking a job?
Buy crypto now.
Okay. Dan.
How quickly can he learn the ways of Washington?
All right. The correct answer is, contrary to what a lot of people warned about, and I told them they could be wrong, this administration is attracting some very talented private sector people to come in and work in the administration. And some people wouldn't have predicted that. Maybe David Sachs isn't everyone's cup of tea, but he's an extremely brilliant and accomplished guy. And the fact that he's giving up his private sector career temporarily to come in is a big deal. And that's 1 sentence because it's all semicolons and commas.
By the way,
yes.
Again, because I can't help myself on some of these
We don't know he's giving his career up.
No. But this is what Dan
just temporarily.
Listen, there's a loophole called SGE, Special Government Employees, where you can work for 130 days. Yeah. It's a minimal amount of disclosure. You need it done, by the way. Tips need it done for perfecting this.
Yes.
Is that there is a way to do this where you dip in and out of government for 130 days, minimal disclosure, minimal requirements to recuse yourself and to get rid of assets you own. Just to give people a perspective, like when I got named White House press secretary, they go through your financials and you sell everything. If you've been given stock as a kid, whatever, you sell it all. And you do get you get this little, they call it I forgot what the name of it is, but you get this thing that
certificate of deposit or
certificate of divestiture. Yeah. You're the Treasury Secretary. That's a big deal tax-wise to you. But I only say that because for a lot of people, they're going, do I really want to give up my business? And you have to sell it. You have to sell your stocks. Going into government service, if you've been successful, is a big problem.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna talk about one more topic. We're not going to show the video, but I'm going to tee it up and ask Dan to comment, and we're going to go to your questions. So again, if you want to be in, we're going to end a little early today. So be ready to ask your questions. Last night on Two Way Tonight, Ro Khanna, the Democratic congressman, was our guest. Someone came on to ask a question. Former Illinois Congressman Dan Lipinski, a Democrat who lost a primary. Unbeknownst to me and to Dan Lipinski lost his primary, at least in part, because Ro Khanna, along with some other Democrats, endorsed in the primary against their incumbent colleague because of the issue of abortion. Congressman Lipinski has a strong record on labor issues and other issues important to Democrats, but he was one of the few pro-life members of the Democratic caucus, and he lost the race. And Congressman Lipinski, in a very respectful way, asked Ro Khanna about that, particularly significant because Ro Khanna is one of the champions in the party now of saying that the party has to be more tolerant of diverse points of view to have as big a tent as possible. It was an extremely compelling moment. It's about 7 minutes. We're not going to show it. But Dan, explain why that moment was so significant in the context of the debate within the party now.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge because the party is saying all the right things. We have to attract more people. We have to have a bigger tent. We can't have litmus tests. We can't be the word police anymore. But it is another thing to put it into practice. And there are a few issues that seem to unify or rev up the Democratic Party more than the issue of abortion. But the reality is that at least, about half the country is pro-life. And if you want to have a lasting, durable majority, you need to attract both the pro-life and the pro-choice community. And so the fact that Congressman Lipinski, raised the history, and then not only did he do it in a respectful way, but he then kept speaking up to try to see if Congressman Khanna would agree that, would he support him, a pro-life candidate, if he were to run again? And Ro said, I'm often asked about mistakes that, I've made or how I've changed since I've come to DC. And one of them is I'm not as hot-headed. And yes, I would support you if the district, had a sizable pro-life community. And I think I'll be curious to see what the fallout is within the caucus, within the pro-choice community. Seth Moulton, wrote his op-ed and got attacked not by other members of Congress, but by the kind of influencer world that is, they have an incentive to gin up and dig in. That's how they raise money. It's how they keep their relevancy. So I think it's a really healthy first step. I think there are going to be a lot more of these. They're going to be messy, but are we welcoming of people who are different than the core of the party?
All right. Thank you for that. We urge you to watch it. It's on YouTube. You can see it on my X feed. It's incredibly interesting, and both men conducted themselves fully in the spirit of the presumption of grace, peace, love, and understanding. It's a wonderful exchange, very illuminating. Sean Duffy.
A shout out that would not happen on almost any other platform, partly because we're two-way, and Congressman Lipinski out of the blue came on and raised his hand. But that is a testament to this platform and what does and can happen.
Amen. Sean Duffy, welcome in. Remind people where you are, what's on your mind.
Oh, are you muted?
You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Sean, if you can fix your mic, please do. Otherwise, we're taking away one person with a famous name. Sean, keep working on it. We'll bring you back. Let's bring in James Reagan, someone else with a famous name. He paid for this microphone. Let's hope it works. Mr. Reagan, tell folks where you are.
Good morning. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and I voted for Kamala Harris, although you didn't ask that. But,
okay. We've asked it less now that the election's over, but thank you for sharing.
Yeah. So, but I do want to talk about that, your last comment about Ro Khanna and the conversation about, are Democrats who hold pro-life positions welcome in the party? And I'm one of those Democrats, and I would love for the party to kind of align itself internally with, consistency, saying, we support people all throughout their life. We have a strong message about supporting people economically, supporting people, in their personal lives, and I think that. It's inconsistent to say, we support life, we support everybody who's alive without saying, and then to contradict that by having this, pro-choice stance. So I would like the Democratic Party to be more internally consistent. I think it would have a stronger message. It would definitely attract more folks who would cross the aisle if it didn't support that pro-choice position. And we would have a bigger, broader tent if we did make folks like me feel more welcome. And that's what all I had to say. about that.
How would you, thank you for that. How would you describe your position on the issue?
I voted against the abortion amendment here in Arizona. I'm pro-life for, yeah, I would just describe it as pro-life with, you know,
Do you believe in the
with few
three
exceptions.
exceptions?
With
exceptions?
few
Okay.
with few exceptions. I think I would probably go more towards the, you know, I personally would go more towards you know, fewer exceptions than more exceptions, but you know, I would tolerate you know, some reasonable exceptions, and I would like, you know, I would like the Democratic Party to be like we used to be, where we used to say abortion should be legal,
Safe, rare, and legal.
safe, rare, and legal. Yeah, what
Yeah.
happened to that position?
Bill Clinton.
You know,
Yeah.
why can't
Dan.
we go back to that?
Thank you, Mr. Reagan. Dan.
Yeah, I think, look, I think that, to be clear, I think the Democratic Party will always be a pro-choice party. I think the question is, to what extent are there exceptions? Either, you know, you're talking about kind of limiting to where there are few exceptions to perform abortion. I think others in the party want to talk about limits on the other end of when maybe, you know, we need to be a little more have more conversations about late in term. Often that's because of a woman's health issues. I want to be clear. Look, I think the party, just as Trump said, I will be the president of IVF, or the godfather of IVF, I forget what the saying was, and I'll be great for women. And he wanted to try to attract pro-choice women to support him in the Republican Party. We need to be welcoming of pro-life people, find areas where we agree. You know, how do we support families? How do we support people so that they feel like if the decision to have a child is financial, or they're not sure that they can do that, the pieces are in place to move forward to do that. You know, in my opinion, Bill Clinton, as you said, kind of hit the nail on the head. He threaded that needle of safe, legal, and rare. And the conversation, kind of particularly with Roe, has gone much higher than that, right? It is like yes or no, for or against, and everything in between, which is where I think most of this country is, right? They're not 100% pro-life. They're not 100% pro-choice. It's a tricky topic. People have their own histories on this. Trying to find that reasonable middle ground and not be extreme is probably, whichever party does that will probably have a better chance of success. And ironically, Donald Trump did it better this campaign, which pains me to say, than Kamala Harris, who would not answer questions. Now, Trump dodged questions himself, but he appeared way more moderate and open than Kamala Harris did.
Sure did. Thank you.
I agree.
Sean.
I think that, I mean, you look at our party, we are unequivocally pro-life and stand up for the unborn. I'm proud of that. But I think that you've seen, especially through Donald Trump, a welcoming of people who are not there yet and saying, you know, we're not going to rule you out because of this, but you need to understand where we are, meaning that we are where we are. We're proud of it, but we're willing to welcome in people who aren't, you know, as we like to say, aren't there yet. So I think that's where the Democratic Party, you know, consistently misses the boat. The idea that that the Democrats can't give a number when you talk about abortion and saying that there's an agreed upon week, trimester, month that we can agree unequivocally, science tells us that life is viable, is kind of silly for a party that loves to claim itself about science, but then not to be able to talk about this. And the simple test, without going down a rabbit hole on this, the thing that I find so funny is it's not funny, it's ironic, is if a woman is murdered or killed pregnant, the person is charged with killing two people. So, and no one has a problem with that, seemingly. I've never heard anybody object to that. So my question is, if a woman is killed carrying a child and it's a double murder, then how can you then turn around and not give credence to that being a life? So I think that we have gotten to a point where I think our party is definitely more tolerant of people who are not fully on board with life yet, but we're willing. I mean, I don't want to go down an entire rabbit hole on this episode, but I will say that the principal function of any government is to defend its people. And so therefore, if you believe in life, you must defend its people, and born or unborn. And as soon as you can definitely unequivocally talk about a viable fetus, that is a child, that is a life. We believe it happens at conception, but I think there's no question that we can agree bipartisan wise that it happens way before birth.
You know, one thing that'll be very interesting, though, as the victors here, is I think the pro-life community is going to want to see the president do certain things in exchange for their adamant support. And this will be very interesting, whether either, you know, he would not answer a national abortion ban, just as Kamala would not answer the 9th month, you know, questions. He would not answer that. And I think, does that come up? I think Republicans would pay a massive price if they even call a vote on that. And I think the second thing is, there's a lot of things you can do through executive order that have been rumored that they may do to make access to both IVF, birth control, and other things cross-border much, much harder. And so we will see, right? When you're in control and you have a big tent, it is hard to keep that tent together. So we're going to see.
And here's what I would guess. If I could look into a crystal ball on this issue, Donald Trump is not up for re-election again, right? I don't think a national abortion ban is something that is unrealistic. You don't have 60 votes in the Senate. It's not going to happen. We are not going to piss people off. We are not stupid politically. I am a believer that we should make incremental change to this. I mean, as like the closer we get to a world where we don't have to worry about this, supporting mother, supporting the unborn, is where I want to continue to move towards. But we're not stupid politically, and we're not going to blow things up that are not possible now. I also think that Trump is very aware of where this issue is politically and is not going to go off the deep end on this. I think we will continue to move forward. And to your point, Dan, I think the pro-life community has been very happy with the judicial choices. And again, for the most part, they've handled this issue very, very well. They didn't blow it up during the campaign when Trump, and totally. They could have. And I just think that, so
they deserve credit for that politically, huge credit.
Yeah, James, go ahead.
So I think Trump was very smart the way he positioned it, because he says it's in the states. You know, it's up to the states to decide what they're going to do. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens at the appellate court level regarding some of the things that happen in the states, though, around that issue, and whether maybe not whether Trump sides on that, but maybe at least in terms of what the high court does around that. So
look, as a Democrat, I believe the country wants access in some capacity on this issue. I think it is a political winner for us. I think we will stand our ground. You know, compromise is good, but I want to be clear as a Democrat. And if Republicans don't agree, by all accounts, as Sean said, I think they know they'd be playing with fire, and it would give us a great chance to get off the mat.
I think it should be one of those. Oh, yes, you're welcome. Thank you for a second chance to come back and chat with you. Appreciate your format. Appreciate the grace. Thank you, James.
Appreciate the topic, important one. Okay. David, welcome in. Tell folks what's in your mind, please.
Well, I appreciate you correcting me there on, the grammar. Anyway, appreciate things. I actually watched Rose, interaction with Representative Lipinski. I actually lived in Illinois, wasn't in his district, but Lipinski, from a just a labor perspective, very very good. I know, and was well known. I actually responded, Dan, to your X post that you put out last night about it, and I just said it was a great conversation, but where I really struggled, Roe answered it, but he did his political dance around it. As I get it, you're a politician, you got to do that. But it was, he basically was saying, as long as you're in a district that is more pro-life, and you're a Democrat, potential, then I won't go, won't basically put somebody against you or primary you. I just don't agree with that. If you true, and it's just like the same thing with, right now people are going after Joni Ernst, from a Senate perspective. And to me, I don't agree with that. If they don't think if she doesn't think Pete Hegseth is the right person for her obvious reasons, she's got to make the, you know, the call based on that, right? I get it. You have to give some benefit to Trump and his who he's choosing. He wants to disrupt. But I guess, Dan, to you, were you comfortable enough with his response that it still would bring people into the party from a Democratic perspective, or no?
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, and I think one of the things that was so probably hurtful for Dan Lipinski is it is pretty extraordinary for a sitting member of Congress to endorse against a colleague, unless like a huge scandal, right? You know, something that's
Right.
really, really abnormal versus a, you know, held policy position that the person's had for a long time. And so I think, you know, that was pretty apparent about how Dan felt. I would hope that the party would look at candidates not just on a single issue, but would look at kind of a broader bailiwick of issues. And ultimately, you want a candidate that reflects his or her district the best. That is what you want. The safest way to get reelected is to be very in touch with your district. If you're not, you have problems. So, you know, if it is the issue of abortion that the district says is really our number 1, 2, 3, and 4 issue, then that is something we need to consider. But otherwise, I would just hope the party would not say, here's 1 or 2 litmus tests, and, you know, if not, you're out. I think we'll struggle.
Right. Yeah, I think, look, primaries, you have to be realistic in politics. If you don't have the majority, you don't govern. That's the bottom line. And so being pure sometimes, like I will tell you, like I grew up in Rhode Island, as you guys know. I think I worked for Senator John Chafee, an unabashed moderate, but he was probably, you know, one of the single Republicans that could get elected in Rhode Island. Susan Collins in Maine. I think she does a phenomenal job representing Maine. She is not as conservative as I would like by any stretch of the imagination on a lot of issues. But I don't know that barring Susan Collins, another Republican can get elected in ranked choice voting in Maine. And so there are certain deals that you have to say, okay, what does that mean? Because when you get a Susan Collins in the majority, we have the committee chairmanships in the majority. We can drive the agenda, and we can make incremental change and progress towards an overall goal that might not be 100%. But again, in my opinion, on this issue of life, you know, if we can save 20 children today or 50 children today, that gets us closer to the goal. You know, even on the issue of Second Amendment, which I'm a strong believer in, we have to have a majority to protect those rights. And so I'm a believer in, as Dan said, you got to respect the people who can fit the district. I think Dan Lipinski did a great job representing the people of Illinois. I got to know him well through a couple of, you know, trips that we took. And it's unfortunate the way that he was targeted. And you see this down there with Henry Cuellar in Texas as well. Yeah. I mean, as a Republican, rather have a Republican every day of the week. Don't get me wrong. But if we can't have that, having a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, strong on borders, Democrat is something that I'm willing to accept.
Yeah.
David, thank you. Appreciate the conversation and the topic you raised. Thank you so much. Yadira, welcome in. Tell folks, unmute, tell folks where you are, what's on your mind, please.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I did hear the comment about buying crypto. I just wanted to say, don't buy crypto, buy Bitcoin. All the other ones are like fiat. You can make endless amounts and print money like the Fed does. So just do some research on Bitcoin. But
Real quick, I appreciate the comment, because just to be clear, if you're taking financial advice from me, you're doing so at your own discretion.
No, I'm just saying a lot of people don't understand Bitcoin, and it is.
Neither do I.
But it's definitely worth, if you are against the inflationary fiat, you should learn about Bitcoin. And it takes a while, but it's worth learning. But my question
Yadira, where do you live?
I live in Houston, Texas.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
No, I'm talking about the whole confirmation and the Joni Ernst situation. It just kind of seems odd that she would highlight and get in the limelight. And now I didn't really know about her, but now I can see different clips about George Floyd, about trans in the military. So now she's got other things that, I don't like where she's positioned on her stance. But now I'm here like, well, she seems like she's not really what the country needs too. So she's putting a target on her head for other issues, because I see my Twitter feed and there's tons of videos showing other things that she said that I think are not MAGA. And I'm not necessarily MAGA, but just seems a little bit more rhino. And so do you think that she's going to have to pay for that, even if she does vote?
I say this respectfully to you, and your point of view represents, from my point of view, unfortunately, the views of tens of millions. The notion of rhino targeting, paying a price, I just don't think those should be part of our politics. There's almost no one in the Republican Party who's perfect. Matt Gaetz had some positions. So I mean, she's a very conservative. She's a huge supporter of the Republican Party. She's very popular in Iowa. Is she perfect on the MAGA scorecard? She's not. But she's doing her best to balance her loyalty to President Trump and the party with making sure that the Secretary of Defense is someone who's ready to do the job. And she's got great experience in that field. There's, as I said here before, there's nothing in it for her politically to take this position where she wants to hear more evidence. There's nothing for her. It's simply to do what she thinks is right. And I think that shouldn't be something where people go around on social media saying she's targeted, or taking every video that's ever been done that suggests she's not perfect on MAGA and say, let's drum her out of the party. That's my point of view. Sean.
So 2 points that you bring up, one on the term and second on Joni. I believe that when I started in the Republican Party, a rhino was somebody that didn't support smaller government, less taxes, cutting spending. Like, a rhino was a Republican in name only, somebody who claimed the thing but didn't vote for smaller government, less regulations, the traditional things that make us a Republican. We throw that term around now as a pejorative. You're a rhino because you made a comment about something. I still believe in the old school term. You're a rhino if you actually aren't supporting the tenets, strong national defense, lower government, et cetera, et cetera. Bad comments are bad comments, might make you a bad person, but don't necessarily make you a rhino. So that's my spiel on that. With respect to Joni, I think that she's doing what she's doing in a very specific way, right? Which is, you heard her comment. She didn't say, I'm a no on Pete. She said, I'm not a yes, right? Which seemingly is the same thing, but it's very clear that it's saying, hey, please don't make me do this. Please don't make me come out and say this. I think it bought some time for Pete. I think it's basically saying to MAGA world, please I don't want to have to get there. And that's why to Mark's earlier reporting, there's a bunch of senators are saying, like, I don't want to have to do this publicly if you force me to do it. And so
my question would be, why wouldn't she just allow the time for the hearings to happen and for the American?
I think that's what she's proposing.
That's why
But she also would like a defense secretary in place. And I think if based on her vote and the votes of others that she knows about, he's never going to be confirmed. If that's her point of view, then I think she thinks it's in the interest of the administration and the world and the country to say, this isn't going to be your defense secretary, Mr. President. So let's start the process of finding somebody
and
else.
I think there's something else. I mean, too, one, just as a Democrat who just had to talk about a big tent, like, be careful if you start driving people out of your own tent. We would welcome Joni Ernst and a statewide Democrat in Iowa again. The second is, Sean has been telling, very smartly about how Pete Hegseth has moved this conversation to, are you MAGA or not? On policy, Joni Ernst has historically been very active in trying to deal with sexual assaults against women in the military, and she is a decorated veteran in her own right. Pete Hegseth has publicly said women should not serve. So if you're Joni Ernst, you may have a little bit of an issue with that.
In combat.
In combat. And secondly, he has real serious allegations of sexual assault, of treating women poorly. May not be right. They're anonymous for now. That may not be the case. But Joni Ernst has credible, substantive, legitimate policy, or personal conduct and policy disagreements that I would think should not be swept under the rug for a position that is one of the most decorated leadership positions in our government and requires sobriety of thought, discipline, strategic judgment. So maybe she ends up, and I think she doesn't want to come out and say this, she doesn't want to thumb her nose at Donald Trump. But at the end of the day, he has nominated someone who has a ton of questions. Yep. In most instances, if it weren't Donald Trump, this person.
We got to close, Sean, real quick.
I was just
Sean,
gonna
we
say,
gotta
just
close.
real quick, the point that is important is on day one, you want your Secretary of State, your Secretary of Defense, your Secretary of Homeland Security confirmed in the bag. I think that's just so Mark's point is explained. Otherwise, you go to an acting, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I'm not Joni Ernst's spokesperson. I'm not saying I love everything about her. What I'm saying is this platform is part of a national conversation that is vital that says, let's not try to eliminate people or attack them or destroy them or drum them out of their political place on the world or primary them, irrationally if it's because of a disagreement. And again, she's not taking a bag of money to do this. She's doing it because she thinks it's right. And as Dan and Sean both said, there are real reasons for it that are not based on the interests even of Iowa. They're based on the national interest. Thank you for the question. Thank you for being part of Two Way. Appreciate it. Ending a little bit early. Again, no program tonight. So the next time we'll see you, barring breaking news, where we'll pop up is Monday, 9 a.m. with this program. Again, we hope everybody has a good evening, a good weekend. Gentlemen, delighted to see you.
Yep. Remember, if you care about the White House press briefing room, SeanSpicer.com. I'll explain it tonight. And then Megyn Kelly at 6, because Mark's not going to be here. I'll fill the void for him. Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah. And I forgot to put in the day book, there's a big thing at Harvard today with Chris LaCivita and other people from the two campaigns talking. We'll probably cover that on Monday. And I screwed up and didn't put in the day book. Dan.
I just good luck to Sean. And I actually was going to mention that same thing. I love watching that Harvard recap of campaigns historically.
Yeah. Dan, cover
nuggets
that
are
for me.
revealed.
Cover that for me because I'll miss it. I'll be on a flight. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you Monday at 9.
Take care.